Today's episode is for anyone who has ever wondered who shapes the story behind a brand, who manages the narrative when a crisis hits, who builds the reputation that makes consumer trust a company, and who decides what the world hears when the brand speaks.
Journalists, they always say once a journalist, always a journalist, and therefore that insight comes in very strongly.
What does managing a genuine industrial crisis actually look like from inside the communications room?
So, in one way, I would say it's a three-way approach. It's more about speed, it's about the tone, and eventually it's all about empathy. Because a crisis.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to FaceTime with Leaders, powered by Directors Institute, World Council of Directors. I'm your host, Sunny Pancholi. Today's episode is for anyone who has ever wondered who shapes the story behind a brand, who manages the narrative when a crisis hits, who builds the reputation that makes consumer trust a company, and who decides what the world hears when the brand speaks. Today's guest has spent 25 years on both sides of the story, 10 years as a journalist covering India's automotive industry for publications including Hindu Business Line, Times of India, and Automotive News USA, and 15 years building reputations for brands like Mercedes-Benz India, Mahindra, Royal Enfield, Lamborghini India, Larsen & Toubro, and Vodafone Idea. Please welcome Mr. Mayur Shah. Mr. Shah, so great to have you here.
Thank you, Sunny. Thank you for having me on FaceTime with Leaders. It's a pleasure being here and look forward to this engaging time with you. Thanks.
Absolutely. So let's dive right in. Mr. Mayur, you have spent years as a journalist, founding member of Auto Monitor, principal correspondent at Hindu Business Line, covering everything in the Indian automotive ecosystem. Then you crossed over into PR and communications. So what made you cross that line? And honestly, what does a journalist who becomes a PR professional see differently from someone who never sat in the newsroom?
So to answer your first question, Sunny, the fact that what prompted me was 10 years of journalism was quite, it's one of the most amazing times I've had. And I was lucky enough to start off my career with something that I was very passionate about, which is cars and bikes and anything that runs on wheels rather. So that experience was amazing, and it kept on just allowing me to, get to know the industry more and more over a period of time. With journalism came a very in-depth insight about the industry, and why I moved over to the PR side was that how could I leverage that kind of insight that I gathered over the past 10 years as a journalist and could leverage it across the public relations industry. To come to your second question, where you mentioned about how has it helped you, the journalists, they always say once a journalist, always a journalist, and therefore that insight comes in very strongly. Yes, from a media perspective, when what does the media exactly want when, say, for example, you come across in a press conference, what are they seeking? So those kind of value additions, and when it comes from the client's perspective, where what is kind of strategy and what can be the communications strategy be, we are able to analyze it very strongly because of the journalist. What I say, the journalist's point of view, which comes in very strongly out there. And that has helped me understand their point of view and keeping the client's point of view together, being able to make it a win-win situation from both ends. And therefore, the kind of story that eventually that you require to come out comes out in the right way, whereby it justifies the role that we are playing as of now as a communications professional. And that has been quite, I would say, an engaging and interesting and a captivating time with the clients when you are on the other side of the fence. So it's been quite intriguing, I would say. Yeah.
Absolutely, Mr. Shah. And that is such a fascinating career arc. And honestly, it makes complete sense. The best PR professionals I have ever met are those who genuinely understand what journalists need, not what they want to hear, what they actually need to write a good story.
Right. That has been the case always. Journalists always looks for what is there which is not yet mentioned or not spoken about to the journalists or to the media at large, and that's why they always drive and for that kind of an exclusive aspect, or even if it is a feature story, that twist that a person wants, that makes eventually what happens for a journalist is very important, that his or her reader is always intrigued by the kind of story that the journalist has written, and therefore that food for thought and that fodder that the journalist requires, if that has been given in a right way, it always helps eventually, and therefore the proof of the pudding comes out when the article is portrays, and that kind of insight always helps when you are engaging on a continuous basis, even after you've been on the other side as a PR professional, but continuously engaging with the media, because even the media landscape has been changing very dramatically. And therefore, it is very, very important and pertinent to always stay glued in order to know what is the pulse of the market. And that said, it makes it even more important to know, because what 5 years or 7 years back, what was the need of the journalist and what is now, there has been more or less has been the same, but there are changes in the way the story comes out. The format has changed, everything has changed. And therefore, one needs to look at it from that perspective as to what is the exact need of the journalist. Fortunately, that is what we have been able to deliver for so long and wish to continue longer.
What a great start to this conversation. So, continuing this conversation, Mr. Mayur, you manage crisis communications for several OEMs. Crisis communication in manufacturing, where unions, workers, media, and brand reputations all collide simultaneously, is one of the most high stakes communications challenges there is. So, what does managing a genuine industrial crisis actually look like from inside the communications room?
Well, in that case, it's more about being on the field, on the ground, rather than being in the communications room, because we need to know, and that too, it has to be done proactively rather than a reactive way. Because out here, silence is not it's not golden, because it is looked upon as a very different way, in very negative connotation by the media, and therefore one needs to have that knack of being careful when you're communicating to the media, but yet being proactive at the same time. So the right kind of communication within the right period of time has to go out in the quickest way possible. And therefore, it is very important that the person at the ground level is the person whom you can trust, like while you are sitting in the communications room, either you yourself are there in the field, or the person whom you are communicating with on the field, there's a total 110% trust factor, which allows you to get direct access of the information immediately. So, in one way, I would say it's a three-way approach. It's more about speed, it's about the tone, and eventually, it's all about empathy. Because a crisis means someone has been in pain or sufferance or somewhere. Something has been at a loss. And therefore, one needs to be cognizant about that very much. Your communication should reflect of that empathy very much on the forefront, and the subsequent action points need to reflect accordingly, and that can only happen once you have a direct feed from at the ground zero level. And I feel that's the best way to go about approaching any crisis that comes forward. More than that, like I said, and I mentioned that it's more about a proactive approach. Therefore, there needs to be a process or a system in place as a crisis manual, which many have incorporated in today's times, and there are still many who are yet to adopt it. So, this kind of things help company to be proactively ready and future ready for any forthcoming crisis. Therefore, these systems allow you to be what kind of actions need to take place as and when a crisis arises. And therefore, you become future ready for it.
Absolutely. In fact, the statement sets the narrative trajectory that is almost impossible to reverse. And I want every CEO and board member listening today to write that down, because the organizations that handle crisis well are almost always those where the communications framework was built in peacetime. And great, that experience is invaluable.
Yeah, the experience has been great. Uh, well, it's always first, it can be overwhelming at times, but the experience also tells you, it humbles you down with how you handle the situation, because as I mentioned before, there is a loss somewhere due to which the crisis is there in the first place. And therefore, it needs to be dealt with a lot of delicacy, and yet with a lot of empathy put into place. Uh, therefore, once the crisis is mitigated, it just gives you a lot of relief that it has been done keeping in mind that the company's reputation has not been tarnished in any way. The company has proactively looked upon the matter, not from a balance sheet point of view, but from an empathy point of view, and addressed to it in the most empathetic, proactive, and in the quickest way possible. These are some of the key things that any crisis should be attended to in a way I feel deemed, because it just helps the company overall in such tough situations.
Rightly said, Mr. Mayur. So, on that note, you have worked with some of the most iconic automotive brands in the world. Uh, India's automotive sector is going through one of its most transformative moments. EVs, connected vehicles, new consumer expectations, and a massive, massive shift in how brands communicate with audiences that are increasingly digital first. So, how is automotive communications changing? And what do brands that are winning the narrative war doing differently from those that are losing it?
So what has happened is, I mean, this is a period what I see between the mid 90s to the late 90s up to 2010, where the typical mindset was all about it all. The communication revolved around the product. Now it's as things are changing, uh, environment is playing a huge role, sustainability is playing a huge role. It's not just about the product itself. It's about the ecosystem. It's all about storytelling. It's all about identity of the person. It's a combination of these factors which eventually run and will derive how future sales of these products will entail over a period of time. We cannot be very myopic in our thinking of just focusing on the product. The product is just one aspect of it. We have to look at it at a larger, holistic way by looking at the ecosystem. And when I say ecosystem, it's all about storytelling, each and every aspect, how each touch point plays a huge role in a decision making when one wants to purchase a vehicle. And it's a it's a it's not a one time, I would say, a one time communication aspect. It is a continuous, all year, for years to go, continuous aspect, because that kind of creates a legacy for the brand and the company. So it's a continuous aspect and should not be looked upon as a one off thing, as and when only when a product needs to be launched.
Absolutely, absolutely, Mr. Shah. Okay, so you have spent your entire career in and around the automotive industry as a journalist covering it and as a communications professional shaping its narrative. India's auto sector is now the third largest in the world. EVs are reshaping the competitive landscape, new players are entering, and consumer trust is being built and lost at remarkable speed. So, Mr. Shah, from your unique vantage point, having seen the industry from both the press box and the PR room, what is the most important communications lesson India's automotive industry still needs to learn?
So I would say uh, it's more to do with very product specifics, but we are not looking at the signals that are coming in because of the change in pattern of the people, how they are looking at a product per se. Uh, some companies have already adopted it. You can see it reflecting with the kind of EV vehicles that are being launched. But there needs a lot of change that needs to come in where you go beyond the product. And therefore, it is imperative that one talks again about the ecosystem in place. So, say for example, if we are talking about an EV, we're not only going to talk about the EV, we're going to talk about the entire ecosystem that plays with the EV, because that plays a huge role in terms of decision making for a purchase of an EV vehicle. So, we are looking at an EV infrastructure, we are looking at a charging infrastructure, we are looking at the EV technology, we are looking at the EV sustainability aspect from the battery point of view. These are various aspects that one cannot ignore anymore when one is looking at the whole transformation in terms of from an ICE vehicle to an EV vehicle, and when one wants to purchase this. As of now, as we speak today, most of the times an EV vehicle is the third or the second vehicle that is purchased. But still, the ICE vehicle is the first vehicle, and that continues to remain. For that transformation to happen, that kind of confidence that a buyer has for an ICE vehicle, that kind of confidence and trust has to be entailed onto him or her in over a period of time. That will only help when this ecosystem improves. We look forward to the day when can we go in a kind of a similar petrol pump or a EV charging infrastructure setup. The kind of time we take to fill up our petrol tank in an ICE engine, that is the same kind of time taken to charge our battery and can we leave and that quick way. That will be the day when the complete transformation will happen for EV and we will be able to move to EV completely. But as of now, as we speak, it's a mixed bag. IC is nowhere to go. It will remain here for sure. And so will EV, which is now growing eventually. I mean, as you see right now in India, the two-wheeler industry of in the EV space is doing rapid gains more than the four-wheeler space. So as of now, anyone if you go and ask, they say it's a wait and watch. Let's see how it goes. I would say the same thing on that front too. That we cannot let go of ICE completely. There will be various formats. You will see ICE, you will see ICE with hybrid solutions, and then eventually you will see an EV. But this whole transformation will come over a period of time, and in every household may have a combination of these vehicles from a daily consumption point of view. So that's the kind of transformation I'm seeing in the coming way for the EV space.
That was incredibly insightful, Mr. Mayur. Thank you for sharing those insights with us. All right, so moving ahead, we have reached the rapid fire round, quick fire round. And given that we have interviewed everyone from auto executives to motorsport champions, these are going to be fun, I think. So, are you ready for it?
Yes, very much. Bring it on.
All right, so first question, a brilliant product with poor communications or an average product with brilliant communications? Which wins the market?
An average product with brilliant communications. Hands down, anything.
Okay, brilliant. Print journalism or digital media, which tells a better story?
I still feel it's a combination of both. Both have their own strengths. and both have their shortcomings in its own way. I cannot ignore either one of them in today's time. As a communication professional, it always helps me to leverage both of them in order to spread the message in the formats that they require. So it's a win-win for both. I can't say either or. Yes.
All right, so that was honest. Next one, the best crisis communications move: speak first or speak carefully.
I would say it's again a combination of the two of them, but you obviously have to speak carefully, keeping that as the first prerogative, with the fact of speaking first too. So you speak carefully, that is the first prerogative, and within the shortest time possible. So therefore, that's how it works out. Because the first message that you during a crisis communication that comes out from your end plays a huge role in how one perceives and what is kind of perception built at that time by the media or any other stakeholders for the company. And so it has to be quick in both ways. Careful and quick is what I would say is the best way to go about it.
Okay. EVs or internal combustion engines, which is more exciting story to tell?
Heart belongs to ICE, but EV is taking the call, and you cannot ignore the fact that EV is here now. Much before, I mean, there was a time when EV has been there as a technology for many years. It's just that it's now caught the fancy of a lot of people and a lot of companies, and the entire industry is now working towards the EV space. So the exciting story does remain an EV, but I cannot let go of the ICE at all. There are some interesting moments which say that ICE is there for the long run, even now.
Great. Next question. One word that 25 years in communication teaches you about reputation.
I would say reputation is a very fragile thing. It needs to be, how do they say over the box is fragile, handle it with care. So I would say the same thing when it comes to reputation, because years and years of very carefully crafted reputation can get tarnished, can get destroyed, can get blown apart with some stupid mistake. And therefore, it's a very, very ongoing thing which has to be done on a continuous manner, in a very consistent manner, with a lot of clarity in order to avoid any faux pas, because it's eventually all about the reputation of the company. So that said, I feel it's very fragile and needs to be handled with a lot of care.
All right, so that is all for the rapid fire round, and I honestly love every answer of yours, Mr. Mayur.
The 10 years has been, I would say, it's been one of the most exciting times because the Indian automobile industry during that time has evolved so much over. I was lucky enough to be part of this golden era, I would say, where I've seen the whole transition happen from the evolution of the Indian automobile industry, where most of the global automobile brands came into India, made their presence. Some are still here, some left, and now technology is taking a call and moving ahead. So this entire evolution, I've been part of it, and it's been one of the most exciting times. I would say I was lucky enough to be part of it. There's still more juice left, and I would feel to say that it's amazing, and the EV evolution will just make it look even better, because the whole ecosystem, for that matter, will change now. Where, just to give you an example, earlier we had in the ICE the number of players that were there in the industry were not more than 20 odd. Now today, you see the number of EV manufacturers are dime a dozen. So there will be a lot of collaborations, a lot of M&As, a lot of things that will happen. And obviously, the person with the latest technology and sustenance will take the lead on that front. So it's getting even more exciting than ever before. That's all I can conclude with. So yeah, it's an amazing time.
All right. So before we wrap up, a few questions to you. Let me put a scenario to you. Because in automotive communications, the stakes of getting it wrong are genuinely enormous. So imagine a major Indian automotive brand discovers a safety defect in one of its best-selling models. Now, the internal reports is clear. Legal says wait. Marketing says the launch of the next model is 3 weeks away. Communications is caught in the middle. So what should happen? And what does that scenario tell us about where governance and communications most dangerously collide in corporate world?
Well, for that, the governance and does not have to be a standalone and should be separated, and neither should communications be separated from that aspect. Today, I feel communication has to be an integral part of corporate governance. That is the only time where any kind of such situations or a crisis that comes up is looked upon right from the bottom of the pyramid at the operation at the ground zero level to the execution aspect from the board level. And therefore, with the example you gave me, it is very important that it's not just looked upon a one-off case, and here the legacy of the brand is in question. And therefore, that needs to be corrected immediately. And therefore, a proactive measure has to be taken, not to avoid the fact that it has to be empathetic by nature, and the fact that it could involve a lot of recall, and what is the kind of inconvenience it may cause to the customers who are already owning that product. So that said, these things have to be put into place, that kind of processes and systems have to be put in place. And all this has to be done in a proactive measure because it reflects how the company looks upon such things in the same equal measure of importance as any other board level decision. And this can only be looked upon and taken into consideration in that way when the board considers communications as an integral part of its decision making processes and systems. So that is how I see it needs to be looked upon immediately.
What you described is not just a communications failure when that happens, it's a governance failure. And the board that allows commercial pressure to override safety disclosure is a board that was not governing its reputational or ethical risk. So that is a powerful and important point to be made.
So it is a case of what happens is it's not just a point of failure out here. It's more of a case of not able to recognize the patterns which are normally persistent out there, but unfortunately it has come out in the open. And while it should have been already diagnosed internally, had there been a process and a system being put in place for that. Therefore, that kind of a system, I would say a crisis manual or a kind of a system process has to be incorporated, which allows the company to be more proactive. And therefore, it allows the crisis not to go out of hand because you are able to mitigate the crisis proactively in a preventive manner in the quickest way possible. And that can only happen when there are these kind of systems and processes in place.
Rightly said, Mr. Mayur. So you are a valued member of Directors Institute, the World Council of Directors. From your personal experience, what has been part of Directors Institute meant to you? And how has that governance and boardroom perspective shaped the way you think about communications and reputational leadership?
I would like to say that it has helped me understand how governance education has helped me groomed into a person which allows me to not look at it at a very low operational level, but looking at PR at a very board level asset value. whereby it helps enhance the entire company's creditworthiness and reliability aspect at a different level, purely because of the fact that decisions could be taken in a proactive manner based on the systems and processes that were put in place. And this kind of education came helped me understand that from a governance point of view. So it's been an amazing. It just enhances the overall vision from a operational to a strategic aspect and a point of view, which was not there before. So it has been quite an enriching and a learning experience for me.
That's really a meaningful reflection, Mr. Mayur. And I think it is particularly important that a communications leader of your depth is bringing governance thinking into the reputation conversation. Because too many boards still see PR as a cost rather than a governance function. So leaders like you are exactly what changes that conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah, because PR doesn't generate revenue as such, but the biggest thing is PR when and the kind of I would say it's a deal breaker also in one way speaking, because it handles the most precious thing, which is the reputation of a company, of a corporate. And like I said earlier, it's very fragile and needs to be, and you can't. It's priceless. You cannot evaluate it when a crisis happens. If you're a public listed company, you end up losing millions of rupees during a crisis because any wrong action points are taken place. So while we do not generate revenue, but we do enhance the overall reputation of the company, and that in itself, I would say, is it's much more than what you can expect from a revenue generation department, because eventually we are holding the cradle of reputation of the company in our hands, and that's, like I said, it's very, very valuable and almost priceless. Yeah.
Absolutely, Mr. Mayur. So let me tell you, this has been a genuinely rich and multi-layered conversation.
Thank
And I
you.
think what made it so special is exactly that multi-dimensional career you have built. So thank you so much for your candor, for your insights, and
My
for the
pleasure.
conversation that was as sharp as the best story you have ever wrote.
Thanks a lot, Sunny, for having me once again. I really had a good time engaging with you and love the kind of questions that you came out. Brought out the most candid answers, I hope. And thank you once again.
Thank you once again, Mr. Mayur. And to our listeners, whether you are a plant leader, a board director, a marketing professional, a journalist, or simply someone who has ever wondered how corporate reputation is really built and protected, today's message is this. Reputation is a board level asset. It is built through governance, honesty, and strategic consistency, not through campaigns and press release alone. The organizations that protect their reputation in a crisis are those that invested in the governance frameworks, the communications infrastructure, and the trusted media relationships long before they needed them. Mr. Mayur Shah has shown us exactly what that investment looks like and why is it always worth making. Signing off for now, this has been FaceTime with Leaders powered by Directors Institute, World Council of Directors. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay ahead. Thank you so much.